I was going to say Mashkia of
Israel. Yes.
Is that his only role?
Yes, that's a major role. That's like the second highest position in the yeshiva. And in some yeshivas, it's even the highest. In these yeshivas in Lithuania, the mashgiach played a leading role. He was the leader of the yeshiva, as opposed to the Rosh Yeshiva, who was really under him. But that was quite an anomaly. Normally it's the Rosh Yeshiva and then the mashgiach. And then, it depends on how big it is and what institution. Like Bnei Yisrael over here has a menahel, so the director, right? That was Rabbi
Jerome
Neuberger.
Oh, yes, who just died.
Yeah, and his son took over, right? His son took over. Okay.
So wait, I have a stupid question. Is it the same word as a mashgiach? Wait a minute, what's the word that comes and supervises your food?
Exactly, mashgiach, because what does the word translate to? To look over. Mashgiach means to look over something, to be an overviewer. So the mashgiach on the food at the restaurant is making sure that the food's kosher, right?
Yeah.
The cooks and everything are just cooking the food, but who's actually making sure that all the produce is kosher and nothing goes wrong? That's the mashgiach. So that's in a kashrus sense, but in the yeshiva, the mashgiach is the one who's concerned, who's overviewing the well-being of the students and their spiritual growth, not just their Talmudic learning. So he's the one, right? Who's the one that comes and knocks on your door in the morning to get you to Shachris? Not the Rosh Yeshiva, but the mashgiach. Right? I met a lovely man in New York, Lieberman, I forget his first name, but he learned in Be'er Yaakov in Israel, and the mashgiach at the time was Rav Shlomo Volby, who I actually got to know a little. Fantastic man. The only two people in the world I've ever met who, to me, they reached a level where God was with them. You felt a different energy, a different presence together with them. And Rav Volby was one of them. He was the most unusual man. You definitely felt something else was in his presence.
It's called an aura, A-U-R-A, right?
I know, yeah, but that aura was God. It wasn't just, it was, they were really connected, amazingly. The other one, by the way, I think is Rav Herschel Schefter, the Rosh Yeshiva of Yeshiva University. Unbelievable person. You just feel, wow, that's what a person's meant to be. Anyway, I digress.
You were talking about Rabbi Dressler.
Rabbi Dessler, and you were asking me about the mashgiach. And oh yes, so this guy I met in New York. He was in the yeshiva with Rabbi Volby. I was never in the yeshiva with him, but I got to know him outside of yeshiva. But he was so on time with everything that the boys knew that, let's say, the afternoon session in the yeshiva started at 3:30 p.m. or 3 p.m. So they knew that they called him the mashgiach, right? The mashgiach would leave his house, right, and take a certain route to the Beit Midrash, and that route took the mashgiach 4 minutes. So they would wait and look out their window because they knew they could get from their bedroom to the Beis HaMedrash, to the study hall in 3 minutes. So they used to wait, look out the window. And when the mashgiach left his house, they would run down and be in their seats by the time the mashgiach came. and he would allow 15 minutes or something for people to be late. But then if you weren't there, you'd get into trouble. Okay. We want to do, this is a very famous Mussar piece by Rav Dessler. I'm sorry it's not straight. I'm trying to see how, I'm sure there's a way to straighten it, but I'm not gonna, let me see very quickly, because it is a bit...
Rabbi, we don't mind. It's fine.
Fine. Okay, good. It's called The Discourse on Loving Kindness, or Giving and Taking. Okay. When the Almighty created human beings, he made them capable of both giving and taking. The faculty of giving is a sublime power. It's one of the attributes of the blessed creator of all things. He is the giver par excellence. We know God, his mercy, his bounty, and his goodness extend to all creatures. V'rachamav al kol ma'asav. God's mercy is on all beings. His giving is pure giving, for he takes nothing in return. He can take nothing, for he lacks nothing. As the verse says, if you are righteous, what do you give him? Our service to him is not for his need, but for our own, since we need a means of expressing our gratitude to him. The man has been granted the sublime power of giving, enabling him too to be merciful, to bestow happiness, to give of himself. God created man in his own image. So that's the one hand. On the other hand, on the other side stands the faculty of taking, by which a person aspires to draw to himself all that comes within his reach. This is what people call egotism or selfishness. It is, now let me find the right one. Hang on. Need to go here. Sorry, give me a second. A3 is 2. It is the root. Oh, let's get rid of those pictures. It is the root of all evil in the world. So here Rabbi Dessler has made a huge statement, right? On the one hand, we are givers, and that's a divine quality. That's our ability to express our image of God. And on the other hand, we are takers. We want to take. And that's the power of egotism and selfishness. And on that, Rabbi Dessler says, is the root of all evil. Now, some people take without anything in return. They are robbers. There are some who wreak evil on the world, on a world scale, such as warmongers and perpetrators of genocide, while others operate on an individual level. The former have no judges among mankind. Only God can give them their just deserts. But there are some who take without, I'm jumping by the way, right? But there are some who take without doing any wrong to their fellow. They merely like to take without giving anything in return. For example, those who love gifts or inherited wealth, or those who like to live on public expense, or those who seek gain or inflated profits. All of these must be included among the takers. The wisest of men said of them, he who hates gifts shall live. These two powers, giving and taking, form the roots of all character traits and of all actions. So this is a typical statement where Rav Dessler, especially in the school of thought that he was a member, would make, right? Looking for a deep and yet powerful, very powerful idea about human motivation, right? There's a word in Hebrew called panimiut. Panimiut means the inside, the inner life, right? The subconscious. Well, I don't know about how subconscious, but at least our inner life. What's going on in our inner life? Are we givers or are we takers? And note, there is no middle way. Now, this is an outstanding comment, right? There is no middle way. Every person is devoted at the deepest level of his personality to one or the other of the two sides. And it is the innermost longing of the heart. And in the innermost longing of the heart, there are no compromises. So, right, that's also a very shocking statement, right? It's to say something very almost abrasive, right? To go that far deep into our personalities and think, what am I really trying to do? What do I mean to gain? Am I giving or am I taking? Now, I think he uses this as a pedagogical technique, because later on we'll see that it's not so simple, right? There are sparks of giving. There are not at all times are we always in the same mood. You could get one person, the same person, who can be very giving and yet sometimes very selfish, right? But what he wants to draw to what he wants to make a point is that deep down, so, you know, he seems to say this on a general level. Every person is devoted at the deepest level of his personality to one of them. I would like to say that, you know, we might find that hard to accept, but at least when it comes to any one decision, whenever you make a decision in life, I think this is very true, right? Odessa is saying you are either giving or taking. And one needs to be very aware that even though it might seem to oneself that you're giving, but maybe you're taking. Or sometimes you're taking, but rarely you're giving. Let's see how that works. Okay. On business dealings, we all know what the merchants and businessmen are going to say. You say that only giving is good and all taking is bad. You will disrupt the whole order of the world, right? How could it be? What do you want? I'm going to get up in the morning and just give and not take anything? All creatures are made by God to both give and take. This is how God arranged his world. Why should man be any different? Why should he not take as well as give? Yes, Joy.
Rabbi, if you're talking about giving and taking, I come to two different thoughts. If you, and maybe I'm jumping ahead, or again, my lack of Jewish knowledge. But let's say you need an organ donation, you need a kidney, you would be considered a taker. The other person is a giver, they're doing it. Are you being selfish by taking a kidney because you need it to live? And then the second piece is, in business dealings, don't you have to develop an industry or develop your skill so you can take care of you and your family, and then you can give. Isn't that, are you taking at that point when you're establishing yourself so that you can give?
Good. Okay, I think that he's going to answer both those questions now, right? But the truth is clear, says Rabbi Dessler. There are two kinds of taking. There are some who take the maximum and give the minimum. Okay, so those are the people that we're calling the takers, right? Who are they? They understand that this is a world of commerce. This is a world of give and take. But they are interested in maximizing how much they give and will only give the minimum. These are the merchants and middlemen who take advantage of every opportunity for profit without ever considering whether the effect and work they have invested really bear any relationship to the profits gained. When they bend their efforts to benefit from their neighbor's failures or take advantage of his ignorance, can this really be disguised from the plain, unvarnished deception? Not to speak of those who amass their fortune by usury, battering on other people's hard-won earnings, or who exploit their workers, paying them a pittance for hard and exacting toil, and to oppress whole nations, ruling them with the tyrant's hand. So it might sound that he is not much of a capitalist, Rabbi Dessler, but I don't think so. I think he's saying that the market, the free market, and it would appear, actually, Rabbi Jonathan Sachs has a very interesting chapter in his book on the dignity of difference, that the free market is the best market, but it in itself cannot be relied on. Meaning, yes, the way the world works is that people sell and people buy and people look for profit, but we have responsibility within that, right? What Rabbi Dessler is saying is, you don't have to engage in that world to be a maximum taker, right? You make good profits, but there are other people that are involved, neighbors, right? People who are ignorant, workers, etc. Those people, right? One should be fair towards. Taking as much as you can and only paying the minimum what you could is not good midot, is not good character trait, right? You're taking, you're not giving. Okay, so that's what he wants to say here. Business at its best. The ways of the tzaddikim, the righteous people among the human beings, are very different. Their giving is maximal and their taking is minimal. Meaning, yes, we have to give and take, but they are focused on how much can I give and what is the minimum that I could take. And even the little that they do is essential for them, since it enables them to maintain the giving and benevolence to which they are devoted. So it follows that their taking too derives from a holy source, from the desire to give. Okay, so once again, this is thinking about our motivations. What is motivating us? Always amusing to me when young men or young people, young women, more regularly with men for some reason. They in yeshiva, there's kind of a watershed at some stage about the boys who are going to try and be rabbis and teachers, etc., and then the boys who are going to go into business and professions. And you know, it's a much easier choice in yeshiva to say, I want to be a rabbi. Oh, of course, that's what we're doing here. You know, you'll become a yeshiva rabbi. So, but the boys who want to go into business kind of have to justify themselves, right? And I'm leaving the yeshiva and I'm going to go work and spend so much of my life and time and energy doing things which are not so obviously, you know, spiritual, right? They're deciding to live a very worldly life, and they feel the pressure and they need to justify themselves. So one of the more simple justifications that these boys come up with are, I'm going into business and I'm going to make so much money in order that I can give charity. Right? And that's okay. You know, it's funny because they don't know what it means to make a lot of money. And when they do, you'll see how much charity they really give. But that's really, okay, you know, if that would be honest, if they would be honest with themselves, and really, if that was their motivation, okay, right? Then they're taking they're taking their work, they're wanting to make profit, derives from a holy source, from the desire to give. Right? The only problem is that we need to be, and we all need to be very honest with what is really motivating us. Okay.
So Rabbi,
yes,
there is a mitzvah where you bury the dead to the end of the complete burial. You shovel the
yes,
soil, and that's supposedly one of the largest mitzvahs, because the person who's dead cannot ever repay you. Is that I keep thinking of that when you're talking. Is that
yes, that's what the Talmud calls chesed shel emet. That's a true giving. Why? Because you can't really expect anything back from the dead person, right?
Are there any others similar to that?
Examples of true giving. I don't know offhand. You know, and of course that becomes difficult, right? Because let's say you do it, but you expect something back from the family, right? You expect something back from other people. Yes, Joy.
What about Maimonides' highest level of giving is to give or teach someone how to work anonymously. You do it completely for the benefit of someone else.
Yeah, so that's part of this, right? Those 8 levels of Maimonides in charity, that you should try and give charity. He's trying to maximize the giving and minimize the taking. So the best thing is that you don't even know who the person you're giving charity is, and they don't even know who they got it from, because then you can't expect, you know, you have no expectation for getting anything back. You've maximized your giving.
How do you put that into practice in today's world, where many times
you give to the associated? There you go. Yeah, sorry.
You took the words right out of my mouth. You give so that no one knows how much you gave, but it goes to help others. They don't know you, you don't know them.
Correct.
But you're helping them help themselves.
Correct. But many times we have lists of what people give at a certain level. You have people's names on buildings, which I know are incentives for some people to give. But is that truly giving at that highest level? And
No.
is that truly what we should be teaching?
I don't know. I'm going to let Linda answer that question.
So Joy, you're absolutely right. There's always going to be this urge for recognition, and there's always going to be, well, if he can do it, then I could do it also. And there's a give and take in fundraising. But as long as it comes from in my opinion, as long as it comes from a place of love and giving and compassion and a desire to help others, I think that's what's most important.
Nice. And we're going to get to a very interesting discussion. I don't know if we're going to get to it today. But there is an idea that the rabbis call mitoch lo lishma ba lishma, which means doing the right thing, even though you're doing it for the wrong motivation, will bring you to doing it for the right motivation. So what's better, not to give charity at all, or to give charity for the sake of recognition? So the rabbi said, rather give charity for the sake of recognition, because even though it's not a very high level, first of all, the charity is being done. And second of all, you will come, the more that you do it, the mitzvah that's involved will help you to come to a deeper and purer motivation. That needs to be understood, because it doesn't always work. But yes, that would be an approach. Good. Okay. How are we going to conceive of both giving and taking at its best? Let's examine the actions of two of the greatest human beings who have ever lived, one of them belonging to the very earliest times and the other the very latest. We shall then discover the right way, for if we follow in their paths, we shall never fail. The Torah writes about Chanoch, who was the 7th generation after Adam. This is even before Noah. And Chanoch walked with God, upon which the rabbis say, Chanoch was a cobbler, and with every single stitch that he made, he achieved mystical unions with his creator. Okay, so the Midrash is saying, what does it mean that Chanoch walked with God? He was with God because he was able, through his work, to achieve mystical unions with his creator. I've heard a beautiful explanation of this in the name of Rabbi Yisrael Salanter of blessed memory, an interpretation which is indeed typical of his whole approach. He said that this midrash cannot possibly mean that while he was sitting and stitching shoes for his customers, his mind was engaged on mystical pursuits. This would be forbidden by the din, by the law. How could he divert his attention to another matter while engaged on work which he had been hired to do? That's 3 and 4. To do by others. So says Rav Yisrael, the mystical unions which Chanoch arrived were nothing more nor less than the concentration which he lavished on each and every stitch to ensure that it would be good and strong, and that the pair of shoes he was making would be a good pair, giving the maximum pleasure and benefit to whoever would wear them. In this way, Chanoch achieved union with the attribute of his creator, who lavishes his goodness and benevolence upon others. This was his mystical union. He was united and wholehearted in his desire, his single-minded ambition to attach himself to his creator's attributes. Of course, as a natural consequence, he was protected from any hint of evil or wrongdoing. There could be no question of his ever deceiving or overreaching his customers, even unwittingly. His taking would never exceed the value of the work he was doing, the measure of his giving. So that's a typical Mussar way of looking at the world, right? Where you might have expected that these mystical unions were very spiritual in nature. There was something unworldly, where the Balei Mussar were very practical, right? It's the story is said that someone once, Rav Yisrael Salanta was traveling, and it was Pesach, and someone invited, he would be in a town away from home for Pesach, and someone, a dignitary, a wealthy man in one of the cities, invited Rav Yisrael Salanta for the Seder. You know, and he said, please join us for Seder, and he was so excited that this Torah giant would join them, and he imagined that that stay up all night learning about the Haggadah, just like the rabbis in the Haggadah themselves. So Rav Yisrael Salanta said to him, I would like to take your invitation, thank you very much, but on one condition, and that is that your maid has to finish by midnight. And that means your meal has to finish by midnight, right? So he wasn't, yes, you could sit there with the rabbi and you could think about the most mystical, moving, highest ideas, which I don't think he was against. But one thing's for sure, it had to be done within a very practical, physical concern that you're doing the right thing, right? At the end of the day, we are physical, practical people, and that's where our Yiddishkeit should come out. And yet we see that's called a mystical union, because he's giving, right? This Chanoch was giving every time he did another stitch in his shoes. He was giving because his motivation was to maximize his giving and minimize his taking. Why would he take at all? Because he had a need. So he would fulfill that need, of course, but he would be very careful not to overstep what was fair, and make sure that everyone else involved was also thought about and needed to be compensated fairly. Okay.
Rabbi,
Yes.
what that seems to say, bringing it up to sort of date, is that when we do our work to the very best we can, and we are full personality and everything, then does that help to create the mystical union, even if it's not something as basic as shoes?
I think he is talking and focusing on motivation. So I think if the reason why you're doing your best work is for the benefit of others, right? For the purpose that others should benefit the most, then of course, one definitely should do that. If one is motivated by ego, by selfishness, by the desire for recognition or profit, I think Rabbi Dessler has an issue that
Right.
you might be enhancing your selfishness, not reducing it.
Right.
It's so funny because today I was talking to this woman and she gave me the name of this book that she really it's called Five Levels of Pleasure, Enlightening Decision Making. Have you heard of it?
By who?
Well, the original was by somebody else, but now someone just re-edited it, Noah Weinberg.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's his book. Yeah.
And it talks about the first level, which is sort of like, you know, materialistic, the pleasure
Right.
you get from materials, you know, from things. The second is your family and how much you can get pleasure from your family. But the third, fourth, and fifth levels are truly about giving and the pleasures you get from giving, the pleasures you get from connecting, the pleasures you derive from, you know, just being a good person.
Yep.
So I just ordered it on Amazon as a matter of
Good.
fact, today.
Fantastic.
You've heard of it?
Okay.
Matt? You've heard of it?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
You know, Rav Noach Weinberg, was the brother of Rav Yaakov Weinberg of the yeshiva here, of Nei Israel.
Oh,
Yeah, he's the brother.
thank you.
And he started Eish Torah.
Right.
He was the rabbi behind Eish Torah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Right.
The person I work with, Rabbi Shalom Schwartz, is very close to him. Very, very close to him. A student and very close to him.
Huh. Well, once I read, I'll lend it to you, Rabbi.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, there's another story here, which is of the second story, concerns Rabbi Yisrael Meir Cohen of blessed memory, universally known as the Chofetz Chaim, the holy tzaddik who we had the merit still to see in our own generation. He did not want to make a living from his Torah learning, so he decided to open a grocery store. It goes without saying that his goods were the best quality, his measures were always heaped up, and his scales always tipped in favor of the customer. Naturally, people crowded into his store. Then Rabbi Yisrael Meir said to himself, then how will the other grocery stores make a living? So he decided to open his store only 1 or 2 hours a day, just sufficient for him to earn the few pennies he needed to keep himself and his family for that day, and then to close to enable the other shopkeepers to make a living too. But then he noticed that his plan was not succeeding. Most of the customers managed to get to his store during the brief time it was open. So in the end, he decided to close his store altogether. He would not be a grocer if this meant causing injury to others.
Doesn't that example, doesn't the Torah give examples or that you can't be so close, you can't be in competition with other people?
Yes, yes. There's a concept called masik gvul, which means the way the Torah speaks about it is moving your boundary over into your neighbor's property. Right? You're going to put up a fence. You're not allowed to put it up on his side to make sure that you've taken some of his ground, because you've encroached on his property. So the Talmud says the same thing's true about a person's living. Right? There are definite laws about if a person has a business, whether or not you're allowed to open up in competition. Right? Now the truth is, in America, it's hardly relevant, because at any time we live in a much broader society than just Jewish people. So anyone, there's no surety that someone else isn't going to become a rival. But definitely these are questions that come up. Okay. Okay, now says Rabbi Dessler, a very interesting idea. So we've established that the world is made up of givers and takers. And one should really think very, very deeply and honestly about one's own motivations, right? Why are we doing things? Are we really giving, or are we trying to get recognition? Are we, right, when we're taking, are we trying to take the maximum, or are we trying to minimize that? On the roots of love, there's Rabbi Dessler. There is nobody in the whole world who does not possess at least a spark of the faculty of giving. So here he says, listen, I've painted a very stark picture, the givers and the takers. Does that mean if you come to the conclusion that you're a taker, that you're, what can you do about that? Are you damned because of that? So he says, no, everyone in the world has a spark of giving. This may be, for instance, at times of family rejoicing, when people of the most grasping nature still feel the urge to involve their friends in their celebration. No one's joy is complete unless he can share it with others. Similarly, everyone has a deep-seated need for social life of some sort. This is why solitary confinement, separated from the company of one's fellow men, is considered such a severe punishment. What is the nature of these yearnings? Sparks of the faculty of giving. We all want to have children. Two motives may be distinguished here. We want children to give us a sense of continuity. We feel that death is not quite so final if we have left children behind us. But perhaps even stronger motive is the need of someone on whom to lavish our love and affection. This is why childless couples will often adopt orphan children and bring them up as their own. Some will even lavish their affection on a dog or another pet animal and treat it almost like a child. Boy, and he wrote this 60 years ago, right? That's this too is an indication of the hidden depths of the power of giving in the human soul. So again, a very deep psychological insight into people's motivations. I think we have to be careful here, because if we are really looking to take when we give to others, if we are looking for a response, if we are looking for love, right? We're all looking for love. Everyone wants to love and be loved. If we reach out to other people and we give to them, and we are not met with the response that we want, so that is, first of all, it's somewhat putting oneself in a vulnerable position, right? It's reaching out to another, giving them, trying to develop a relationship, and not being responded to in kind is very disappointing, right? That can be very disappointing. I think personally that so many people love their pets, their dogs, because generally speaking, they really do respond in kind, right? A little dog or something, right? When you call their name and you give them food and you pet them and you tickle them, they respond. They love it. They always love it. They are fine receivers of our love. People are more complicated, right? How often do we see that someone is walking a dog and a stranger comes up and starts talking to the dog and embracing the dog and cuddling the dog and hardly acknowledges the owner? And it baffles me. Well, hang on a second, who's more important here, the dog or the human? But I think, it's what Rav Dessler is saying. Deep within the human psyche is this strong motivation to lavish our love and affection. We're motivated we want to love, we want to give, but we are more afraid to do that for people than for animals, or especially a dog, especially an animal that can accept our affection, because they don't leave us. The love we give to pets is not a vulnerable love. We're pretty sure that the animal's going to respond positively, is going to accept, is going to, in a way, mirror the love that we have for it, right? That's why the Hebrew word for dog is kelev. Kelev comes from the word ka-lev, like a heart. It's a very affectionate animal, right? A dog is able to give us a sense of affection, right? Has anyone here had an animal that loves them? For sure, right?
Yes.
Yes.
There is a reason for that, though, is that,
Oh,
you know, why they have that nature, dogs, because they're from the wolf, as you know, and there's an alpha male wolf, and all the others submit themselves to it, and therefore to be part of the pack and to be affectionate to one another is all part of binding the pack together. Where a cat is the opposite, because it basically lives in a hole in a tree where it came from, and it doesn't require us. That's why we don't get that same kind of affection from a cat. You know, so there's real biological reasons why they're so friendly and so giving.
mm-hmm. Interesting. Well, thank you, everyone. Okay. Now, here we come to an interesting question. We see that love and giving always come together, right? In fact, a lot of the time, what we mean by love is care, right? You care deeply about someone. You might be in love that we reserve for romantic love, but most of the love that we have, you know, love for a friend, a love for a parent, is a deep caring and a deep will to be connected and do what you can for the best for the other person. So here's Rav Dester's question: is the giving a consequence of the love, or perhaps the reverse is true? Love is a result of giving. We usually think it is love which causes giving, because we observe that a person showers gifts and favors on the one he loves. But there is another side to the argument. Giving may bring about love for the same reason that a person loves what he himself has created or nurtured. So this is another fantastic psychological insight. He recognizes, right? Yesterday we did a Mother's Day project, and we got some mugs and we painted them. So you can, this is not one I made, but you paint a picture. And, you know, I love the mug that I painted. Why? Because I recognize a part of myself in that mug. That's my creative act. We love that which we create. Whether it is a child he has brought into the world, an animal he has reared, a plant he has tended, or even a thing he has made, or a house he has built, a person is bound in love to the work of his hands, for in it he finds himself. I have been shown a source in the sayings of our rabbis which indicate that they held the opinion we have just put forward, that love flows in the direction of giving. They say in the tractate Derech Eretz Zuta, if you want to keep close to the love of your friend, make it your concern to seek his welfare. And so this is, by the way, in the Hebrew, this is called a kuntris. A kuntris means a collection of writings. And this is the kuntris hachesed. This is known as the collection of writings on giving and loving by Rabbi Dessler. And this is one of his most famous insights, and something that he taught and practiced was that giving, it is your giving which leads to love. Love of this kind can go very deep indeed. Let us observe what is written in God's Torah. This is the only source from which we can learn the true depths of the human heart, for only the Creator knows the secrets of the human soul that he created. We find that among the categories of men permitted to return home for battle are the following: whoever has built a new home and not consecrated it, who has planted a vineyard and not redeemed it, and whoever has wedded a woman and not taken her to his home. All are treated in exactly the same way. The builder of the house and the planter of the vineyard equally with the new husband who is involved in the most intimate of human relationships. The Torah thus reveals to us that the love we bear to the fruit of our labors is directly comparable with the love of a man for his betrothed. There can be no doubt that this is an example of the love produced by the power of giving. And now he tells a little story, and we're going to end with that. Here is a case which I personally observed. Apparently, this happened to him, but he turned around to who the parents were. I knew a young married couple whose little son was the delight of their lives. War overtook the town where they lived, and they were forced to flee. It so happened that the young mother was away from home on that day. The father fled with his little boy in one direction, while the mother was forced to take the opposite route. And so the family was separated by the warring armies. And so they remained separated in sorrow and yearning all the years of the war. At last, the battlefronts grew quiet, peace returned, and they were reunited. And what a happy family reunion that was. But a remarkable thing came to light. They could no longer make good that which the years had taken away. The love between the father and his son was deeper and closer than that of the mother for her son, for the son. Was it because she had parted from him as a small boy and found him grown up? Was she still yearning for the little son she had left behind? But this is only imagination. The cruel fact was that the potential giving all those years was lost beyond recall. It was the father who had trained and reared the child and had lavished on him the 1,001 acts of tender care which normally fall to the lot of the mother. The love which springs from all that giving has passed completely to the father. And so Rav Dessler has this, very tragic story in a way, but reveals a very deep thing in human psychology. So that's all we have time for today. It's a much longer piece, by the way. Linda, the next book you order on Amazon can be Strive for Truth by Rabbi Dessler. Comes in 3 volumes, but I wanted to share that today. That's a great example of Mussar thought in terms of giving, chesed. Last week we spoke about yira, fear and awe, and this week is about chesed, is about loving kindness, and the way that a Bal Mussar, a way to approach it from a Mussar approach. So any questions, comments?
Nate, could you please send, I don't know if everyone wants, but I would love that first paragraph that you read to us, the very first paragraph from
Okay,
Rabbi Dessler.
sure,
It was so beautiful.
sure. I'll find it and send it.
You know what I'm talking about? The very first paragraph.
Yep. Whoops, no. This one.
The giver and the taker, yes.
Okay, sure.
Because I think that was just so it was very meaningful to me that our service to him, you know, we think we're praying to him, and we think we're doing for him, and we talk to God all the time, but it only makes us better people.
Exactly.
Rabbi, can you stay on for a second? So I have one thing to share with you that's kind of embarrassing. So I don't think everybody else wants to hear it.
Now everyone surely wants to hear it.
So I'll tell you real fast. This is my story. One
Okay, wait, I'm not.